For the love of God, please do not tell Disney they own FX. In the conversation of what is the best of the best in samurai entertainment, the normal always springs to mind. Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, Harikari, Sword of Doom, Ran, 13 Assassins, and of course, the 1990 ultra-massive blockbuster, Samurai Cop.
They call him Samurai. He speaks fluent Japanese.
Are you Fujiyama?
What does katana mean?
It means Japanese sword.
Uncuff him! I'm in! Uncuff him!
Oh yeah, and Shogun, the wildly successful novel written by James Clavell in 1975. 5 years later, the miniseries dropped 5 two-hour episodes for 5 consecutive days. It was a straight barrage of awesomeness. Monday all the way to Friday, a third of America tuned in to this show. Entire steel mills shut down. The Los Angeles freeways were emptied. Fertility rates plummeted.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
1980's Shogun starred Richard Chamberlain and his glorious beard, the acting icon Toshiro Mifune as Lord Toranaga, and Yoko Shimada as Richard Chamberlain's beard.
Or maybe you would prefer a boy.
A boy? Do I look like a god-cursed sodomite?
Yes, actually.
Shogun wasn't just a TV show, it was an event. Fast forward 44 years and one Richard Chamberlain coming out of the closet later, FX's Shogun is much like its predecessor, a TV event people should be paying attention to. When was the last time a show felt bigger than the frame it was contained in? Game of Thrones was the last one I can think of. Before that, it was Breaking Bad. In the modern era of streaming services pumping out content for the sake of content, Shogun stands out more than your skin boat docking in Tuna Town. And it's just as ambitious as its predecessor in source material. Shogun demands much from its audience and refuses to hold their hands. It stresses that great character dynamic and complicated alliances can be compelling to watch just as much as when the hack and slash battles take place. Shogun begins where every shogun has begun before. John Blackthorne's ship runs aground near a small fishing village in Japan. Malnourished and riddled with scurvy, John Blackthorne, played by Cosmo Jarvis, is well received. And by well received, I mean a samurai lord pisses on his head after he has an outburst of overacting. The Portuguese were the first European nation to reach Japan, allowing them to keep a stranglehold on trade in the region and converting the Japanese to Catholicism, including a few lords. Blackthorne, an English Protestant who is at war with the Catholics, is tasked with finding the Portuguese trade route and disrupt their trade with Japan. Once he towels himself off from all the sweet samurai urine he just involuntarily bathed in, a Catholic priest marks Blackthorne as a pirate, a mark that means death. This spells trouble for peepee head Blackthorne. To the Japanese, Blackthorne is a barbarian, unruly and savage. To Blackthorne, the Japanese are the barbarians. He witnesses a local villager being decapitated where he stood for speaking out of turn, and one of Blackthorne's men was boiled alive just for the mere sake of having his last words recorded. Words like, no, and argh. But in his defense, he took longer to boil than expected. Blackthorne is a loudmouth English sailor who now finds himself in a land where each act performed and word uttered can mean life or death. But Blackthorne's existence in Japan couldn't come at a better time for Lord Toranaga, played by the always charismatic Hiroyuki Sanada, who faces certain death from his fellow lords he shares power with. They see Toranaga not to be just a threat, but the next shogun if they continue to let him live. Both Blackthorne and Toranaga's stories run parallel to one another. Connecting these two men is Mariko, played by Anna Sawai. She's assigned by Toranaga to be Blackthorne's translator due to his mistrust in the Portuguese priest to translate fairly for both parties. To make matters even more complicated, Mariko serves under Toranaga but is also Catholic. Soon, Toranaga understands that Blackthorne is a much needed pawn in this political game he finds himself in. And Blackthorne, a master at keeping his head attached to his shoulders, showrunners, needs Toranaga to stay alive and disrupt the Portuguese trading monopoly it holds over Japan. And it's these interconnected and deeply personal relationships between Blackthorn, Mariko, and Toranaga that make watching Shogun worth the time. While the first miniseries made sure to keep Blackthorn's isolation in a foreign land a central theme, even going so far to make sure that any parts spoken in Japanese were not subtitled, this new version expanded the characters of Toranaga and Mariko, sacrificing a bit of that isolationism for more character depth. Showrunners Justin Marks and Rachel Kondo said the reasons for this change was the world of today is well connected and versed on Japanese culture, something even 44 years ago seemed like a strange land. Even if that was the case, I think the audience is smart enough to understand Blackthorn as a stranger in a strange land, one where he initially feels detached and views Japan filled with barbarism, while in turn is treated like a barbarian himself. But others have accused the showrunners of quietly eliminating the white savior trope, which, if this was the actual case, is once again modern writers wanting to inject their modern sensitivities in order to not offend anyone. It's a stupid reason to change what has been considered a classic story for almost 50 years. But whatever the reasons for these changes to expand the characters may be, it works. FX's Shogun has two men not only confused and apprehensive of each other and their respective cultures, but also each man is infatuated with those things as well. Caught between them is a married Mariko, who's Catholic but loyal to her master. These character dynamics are contradictory, yet wholly believable. The expansions of the characters, in particular of Toranaga and Mariko, are still respectful of the source material of which they came from. The production value of Shogun is astronomical. Allowing Osaka to live and breathe transports the viewers back to 1600s Japan. There was the utmost care, effort, and research going on to create Shogun's world, and if there are problems with the show so far, there are nitpicks. In the show's trailer, it depicts Mariko swinging a staff around, taking on 10 samurai. I can only imagine this is a particular moment in the story that was reserved for her samurai escorts to handle, but only one can assume, and I will not make assumptions at this time because
everyone knows when you make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and umption.
Cosmo Jarvis is outperformed at every turn by his counterparts of Sanada and Sawai. He takes Loudmouth to a whole new meeting, shouting his lines in over-the-top form. But when the scene calls for a more measured and calm Blackthorn, he seems to settle down in the part with ease. But like I said, they're minor nitpicks that aren't deal breakers by any stretch. Every conversation engages the audience like they're watching a battle scene. The monologues are as big as the set pieces. Every character that speaks to the audience has a clear grasp of who they are and what they want. Great care went into making sure that the show was written well. And with FX releasing an episode of Shogun once a week, its greatness is slowly being achieved. The themes of culture clash, religion, adaptation, political intrigue, life, death, and personal transformation are highly prevalent throughout these first few episodes. In a time where television productions are pumped out like Pez candies and have the longevity for about as long as a cell phone battery that can remain charged, Shogun on FX will fight its way to the tippity top, and hopefully leading the current television landscape into a new era. Just nobody tell Disney they own the show. If you enjoyed this video, you go ahead and smash that like button. While you're done doing that, hit the subscribe button. And then, after that, share this with your friends, family, people you hate. Maybe you don't like my content and just want to waste somebody's time. Do it. Share it. Thank you. It is much appreciated. I'm out of here.
Now, at least speak with Toranaga before we go.
I'm afraid it will not be possible.